Hello, this is a guy who likes fanfiction and is too lazy to read, so here is the Blade Breaker's Daughters in audio form. Check the description for the links to the author. Chapter 16, Interlude, Agasthya. Thales of Agartha was many things. A powerful sorcerer. An immortal sage. The eternal leader of the only true humans in the land of Fodlan. And, at the moment, a curious mix of irritated and overly proud of himself. The pride was understandable, given he finally had his flame emperor. The blood of that filthy beast's consort may have once called themselves emperors, but it was by his hand that one of their ilk had become a true force to be reckoned with. One that would strike down the spawn of the Felstar and bring the Agarthan people back to the world that was stolen from them. The irritation was also understandable, given that before he could bring forth that most glorious of reckonings, he had to pose as one of the beast's so-called nobles. Which meant instead of traveling instantaneously from one location to the next through the might of magic and technology, he had to travel in a dim carriage. "You seem sour," noted his companion for the journey, thankfully one of his people instead of those aggravating vermin he was forced to play politely with. "Is it unreasonable to be? The beast's means of travel are as primitive as everything the abomination has a hold on." Pitacus shrugged, her shoulders bared by the black gown she wore. Black painted lips curled in a small smirk beneath her veil. "I would think you would be happier, Thales. Or should I call you Vokhard in this shape? Bah! I hear enough of that name from the degenerates trying to earn my favor," he sneered, leaning back in his seat in the shape of that all-too-convenient lord he had overtaken. It should have been difficult finding a host of appropriate height and shape to wear properly, but it seemed fortune favored the true humans in just how convenient it was that Lord Arundel had a sister married into the imperial family. Thales may be a masterful manipulator, but he was not one to disregard the factor of luck in having favorable conditions arise. "Thales it is then. Still, you shouldn't scowl. It may mar the face you're using." He scoffed. "Nonsense. A guise of mine will never have any imperfections. Though I won't disagree that I should be more joyful." He let his lips curl into a smirk of his own. "It won't be long now before Cleobulus upholds her end of the plan and puts an end to that kingly bloodline the northernmost beasts crowd around. And what of the alliance? I don't seem to recall you mentioning any plans there. As if I need to do anything there. Those pathetic beasts keep squabbling amongst themselves, barely held together by even the thinnest loyalty. With how half of them support the Empire, it will be easy to keep them under our thumb once my Flame Emperor takes the stage." He allowed himself to chuckle at the thought. "Ah, though perhaps I'll have someone handle that sovereign duke of theirs. Mycen has been bored keeping watch on the region, hasn't he? Mycen gets bored whenever he isn't allowed to play with those crest-altered beasts of his," Pitacus complained. "You think he would be happy with consistent results, but he insists he can push the projects faster and further. Far be it for me to quell a man's ambitions. As long as he doesn't start naming his projects again and keeps them from going too wild, I don't particularly care what he does with filth. Well, we can always let the wilder ones loose on the vermin. It's only natural for larger beasts to devour the smaller creatures, isn't it?" "Ha! Only natural indeed." Thales, wearing the face of Lord Vokhard von Arundel, laughed with a dark humor as his carriage trundled onward through the Okama Mountains. "Just as it will be only natural to see these lands returned to us once more. For it is our time to rise again, and reclaim all that was stolen from us." His mouth curled into a vicious smirk, though he did raise an eyebrow when he noticed Pitacus's lack of response. In fact, the woman was inclining her head for some reason. "What are you doing? I thought I heard something. Actually, do you hear that?" "Hear what?" "I don't hear," and that was when several tons of rock, stone, and loose soil crashed down on Lord Arundel's carriage. It had been centuries since Thales last felt agony on such a level. Slowly, blearily, he opened his eyes and attempted to focus. His vision was blurry and he felt the warm trickle of blood leak down his head. "What?" he muttered to himself, his eyes adjusting to a darkness he was far too familiar with. In front of him, he saw Pitacus. His fellow Agarthan was no longer sitting in her seat. No, she was instead splayed out across the floor, no, the ceiling, the entire carriage had flipped. Her mouth was open in a look of utter shock at her own demise, her veil lifted to show unseeing eyes and her white hair loose around her head in a tangled mess, already stained with her dark blood. And she was most definitely dead. The massive stone staked through her chest saw to that. Thales breathed, slowly. His guise was still in place. He couldn't focus on a warp though. He would have, were it not for his clear concussion. If he tried as he was, the likelihood that he would wind up split to pieces between here and his destination was far too high. Which wouldn't be a problem, if the only dem medic around wasn't dead on the floor in front of him. He snarled and kicked her across the head in a moment of petty, vindictive anger. What worth are you as a healer if you can't even bother to live? No matter. He would survive. He was Thales. He always survived. It took some effort to extricate himself from the carriage, but even a landslide couldn't trap him. The driver to his carriage, some worthless peon, had been splattered across the trail. Not important either though. He looked back to the wreckage of his transportation, then up at the mountainside that had tried to claim his life. Ha! Ha! You see this, Felstar? I cannot die. Not even nature can end my vengeance. He grinned through bloodied teeth, then raised a hand. Ebony and crimson magic swirled about his hand before he clenched his fist and wrenched it down, calling on his own mastery of the earth to bend it to his will. And with it, both the carriage and the evidence of his presence were buried even further. Sure, some hint of the broken remains were still present, but he had assuredly flattened what remained of Pitacus. No need to allow the vermin any hint of his kind. Ha! I would thank you for your service, but you did prove truly worthless in the end, he commented, before turning with a callous laugh. I'll be sure to let the people of Agartha know just how ignominious your end was. Far above Thales, amidst the broken rocks of the cliffside, a single, large boulder still remained unfallen, yet perched precariously atop one small outcropping. Without any external force to act upon it, this boulder would have likely remained in place for untold ages, a curious part of the landscape hanging like a sword above the heads of passers-by. As it was though, the powerful magic of Agartha's great leader shook not just the parts of the mountain he wished to break, but the parts nearby. Which meant the large boulder went from precariously perched to falling over. Despite his centuries of alterations to his own body, Thales was, at the end of the day, still human. And when a very big rock falls onto a human head, no matter how self-important the mind inside it may be, the result is always the same. Such came the ignominious end of Thales, leader of the Agarthans. Chapter 17, The Cold Sucks. The cold sucks. Shay said from where she was bundled up in several furs while the mercenaries set up camp for the night. It had been some time since the team had arrived in the kingdom, and much like a clock, Shay made sure to announce to the camp her displeasure each day at nearly the same time. Byleth agreed, faring a bit better than Shay, as she handed over some stew to her sister. Though it seemed the younger merc wanted to use it more to warm her hands with the bowl rather than eat it. Geralt says we'll be in a city soon. Will it be warmer? The walls should help with the wind. Shay groaned, pulling her furs closer around herself. Why'd we go up north in the fall anyway? Isn't it supposed to snow up here around winter? Probably. I don't remember ever going up here before. Maybe when I was really little. Byleth shrugged, the motion coming a little more naturally to her these days. I can ask Geralt later. Victor said Geralt's from here, so maybe that's why we're visiting. It sounds really weird when you call Dad by his name. I told you why I do it. Still sounds weird. Byleth sighed while Arvel floated above the bunch of them, watching with some amusement. I have to say, being unable to feel cold seems like quite the boon right now. Oh, and you do know your adoptive father is lying about his reasoning, correct? Shay glanced up at the strange being with an annoyed frown, prompting them to continue. I cannot help it if I happen to be better at listening than you are. Regardless, your captain father seems quite convinced your sister, who, I might add, you have not attempted to defeat yet, assassinated another noble. Speaking of, what does he mean by another? Byleth stabbed a noble in Inver for being creepy, Shay explained, prompting Byleth to glance at her. Are you speaking to Arvel again? Yeah. They're curious about a noble you assassinated. I don't think it counts as assassination unless it's politically motivated. Ezra was arguing with Victor about that. Byleth tilted her head, thinking. Victor says you have to be a noble to be assassinated, but Ezra says it's about motivation, not status. Huh. You think Ezra's ever assassinated anybody? He most definitely has, Arvel commented while Byleth shrugged. Probably. He seems particular about it. Don't talk about people when they're not here, the potential assassin in question commented as he tossed some logs on the fire pit. Shay immediately made a happy noise and moved closer to it, prompting a grin from Ezra. Careful there. Furs are warm, but fire can still catch on them. I'll be careful. Hey, Ezra, did I assassinate the noble back in Inver? Byleth asked. No, you killed him, there's a difference, was the immediate response. What's the difference? Shay asked. Killing is just the act of taking a life in general. It can be in self-defense or the defense of others, so it's slightly more justified than murder, which is committing the criminal act of killing another, usually in a premeditated way. Though I guess spur of the moment does count as murder too, but I think we can use the "is he a prick" qualification to say he deserved it. You're really pedantic. Why thank you. Shay didn't intend that as a compliment, but okay. Hey, you're from Faerghus, right? Indeed I am. Row territory originally, in fact. He grinned at the girls while grabbing a bowl of stew for himself. Feel free to ask me anything you might want to know. Oh, okay. Why does Gertrude call you Dove? And how about we stop talking now? How is the kingdom? Byleth asked, trying to keep the conversation going. Well, I haven't been here for some time, but I doubt it's changed its values. It's a lot more traditional than the other nations, got a big focus on knighthood, honor, and all that. Ezra explained as he began to eat. You know, pledging yourself to some lord and then getting sent to die for them. Honor in death, dishonor in defeat, and such. Were you a knight? I was a squire, and if I did become a knight, I likely wouldn't have joined this merry band. Though that path fell away when the knight I worked for decided to make me do his dirty work, and then threw me to the wolves when he got found out. Oh, sorry. Ha, there's no need to apologize. I managed to get away with my life, and learned I'm way more good with a knife than a sword and shield. Grinning, Ezra continued. Besides, now I get to travel around Fodlan. Well, if you want to travel so much, you could point us towards where the money flows best, Gertrude said, sitting down next to Ezra and taking his half-empty bowl of stew from him to eat from it. Well, we should avoid Galatea territory then, even the noble family there struggles financially. Gautier territory might be worthwhile, but that's on the ass end of the nation, and would mostly be defending against the Srang, assuming they give us any work. Thinking for a moment, he continued. Gaspard territory might be good. Haven't met him personally, but while I was in Row, I kept hearing about how well loved Lonato was. Oh, that sounds like a good idea then. Shay said, you should definitely tell Dad that. I don't think he really knows where we're going. Neither of the older mercs would say it outright, but she wasn't wrong there. It wasn't the first time that the captain had changed plans, but this was the first time he did so without a new destination in mind. Hey, I know where we're going, Geralt said as he walked by. Just because I haven't been to the kingdom for a long time doesn't mean I don't remember how to get around. That's not what I meant and you know it. Before you start arguing, Ezra cut in, getting their attention. I was just saying Gaspard territory might be a good idea, it's almost winter, so unless there's other mercenaries over there, we probably won't see much competition. If nothing else, we can probably get some rooms there, which is better than camping out in this cold. I second that idea. Shay announced, not raising her hand as she kept them in the furs. Right, well, I'll keep that in mind, Geralt said, already fully planning on going to that territory. If nothing else, buying thicker clothing there would be good. Exactly, Captain. You can never been too warm when it comes to winters in Faerghus. Ezra paused while Geralt walked off to handle travel plans. Well, unless that warmth is coming from frost sickness, then you're just dying. Frost sickness? Byleth echoed, sounding curious. Well, more curious than her usual neutrality. Yep. It's also called a cold fever. It's when the cold seeps too far into your bones and tricks your mind into thinking it's actually hot. I remember this poor this poor guy, when I was younger, who started ripping his furs off, thinking he was overheating. He went running off into the snow and we found his body a day later, completely frozen through. Whoa, Shay murmured, her eyes wide, that's pretty scary. You bet it is. Folks around here like to tell tales of the winter lady who walks in the blizzards, tempting wayward travelers to nestle into her bosom where they slowly freeze to death. Huh. She sounds like a jerk. That's winter, Shezi. The goddess tests us all when the cold comes around. He chuckled, before tossing another log on the fire. Still, she's generous enough to give us fire, so we can keep warm even in the times furthest from her light. That, and Pegasi, so we can actually travel when the snow's deep. Well, women can travel, they're notoriously skittish around most men. Huh? Why's that? Something about a maiden's fair heart soothing their wild nature. Ezra shrugged, then glanced at Gertrude with a slight grin. Maybe you oughta ask Gertie, I'm sure she'd know much better. You know better than anyone here that I don't count as a pure maiden, Gertrude chided, making Ezra's face immediately redden. Hey, not in front of the kids. That earned a full eye roll. You stab people for a living, but you get indignant if I talk about bedroom affairs in front of the girls. Well, it's not appropriate, is it? Are you talking about sex? Shay asked, and Ezra nearly choked. Gertrude talked to us about it already, Byleth explained, which didn't really seem to help all that much. Geralt asked her to. I swear, men can be ridiculous, Gertrude muttered, ask them to split a man's belly and watch his guts spill and all he'll ask is how much you'll pay him to do it, but start talking about womanly matters and suddenly they discover squeamishness. I think it's more Papa, Geralt didn't know how to talk about it. He's been raising a girl for 16 years, Byleth, and adopted a second one. He should have been planning ahead. I think Dad did plan ahead. Shay spoke up, a grin on her face as she figured everything out. After all, he planned for you to do it for him, right? Damn, I can't refute that. The journey to Gaspard didn't take too long. The roads were still largely clear of snow since true winter hadn't hit yet, and the region wasn't too far from the kingdom/empire border. Geralt wasn't really one to visit the kingdom for one, as aside from his own past, the lands weren't exactly the richest, so work for mercenaries wasn't that common. That being said, it seemed the people of the territory were faring rather well, and were rather happy to greet the mercenary band. As for Gaspard himself. Greetings, you must be the leader of this band of mercenaries. A rather well-aged but still healthy-looking old man greeted Geralt when he was allowed into the manor. That I am, thanks for meeting us like this. I have no reason to turn away guests. Lonato said with a smile, before he looked over to the side where he noticed two young girls. And who is this? My name is Byleth. Heya, name's Shay. Geralt tried not to sigh at his daughter's introductions. My apologies, it's their first time in the kingdom so they're not used to the cold. No need to explain, the winters here are quite cold, and as a father I can understand wanting to keep your children warm and healthy. Lonato's smile kept on his face as he approached Geralt. Now, am I correct in assuming you're here looking for work? Or at least permission to stay nearby until the winter ends? Heh, well as it just so happens, there have been some demonic beasts causing trouble nearby. Nothing Lonato's forces couldn't handle, but he wasn't about to let a father and his kids out in the cold. The pay might not be much, but there are a few empty houses we can lend you and your men while you stay here. Well, that sounds perfectly acceptable. Is there somewhere we can go to hash out the details? We can write up a contract in my office. As long as your daughters don't mind waiting here. No worries, Dad, we'll be good. Shay said, sending off the leader of the group as the two girls stayed behind. Well, he seems nice. Yeah. Byleth said, nodding as she settled into the chair she was in, before she seemed to notice something. Who's there? Sorry. A young boy's voice was heard, apologizing at having been caught peeking at the two. Looking over, Shay saw a gray-haired boy, younger than her, looking at them from around a corner. Oh, hey, are you the old guy's kid? Shay, don't be rude. If you mean Lord Lonato, then yes. I'm his adoptive son, Ash, the young boy explained, sounding very polite. Well, it's nice to meet you, Ash. Are you mercenaries? He asked, still a bit nervous. That we are. You're looking at two of the strongest members of Geralt's mercenaries. You still haven't beat Ezra in a fight, Byleth commented. Shay's confident smile immediately fell into an annoyed pout. You don't have to tell him that. It's good for you to be realistic. And realistically, I'm going to be the strongest, so it doesn't matter if I say it ahead of time. But if I'm going to be the leader, shouldn't I be the strongest? That's because you're the brains. A leader doesn't need to be strong, but they do need to be smart. You agree, right, Ash? Lug and the Maiden of the Wind. Lug was the strongest, so he was the leader, while the Maiden was the smarter one, but wasn't in charge. Huh. So wait, does that mean I'll be the leader? Shay asked. Guess I'll have to be the stronger and smarter one, Byleth decided. Hey, no fair, you can only be one of them. Sorry to interrupt, Ash interrupted, but I wanted to ask, if you're mercenaries, have you been traveling around? Oh yeah, totally, we've been all over the Empire and the Alliance. Really? Have you done anything heroic? Ash asked, very interested in hearing anything they had to say. Of course, Byleth, and I have done plenty of hero stuff. Like the time we saved that one girl, what was her name? Leonie, Byleth answered. Yeah, her. Grinning, Shay patted an empty seat. Come on, I'll tell you all about it. Oh, sure. With an eager smile, Ash sat down, ready to hear the story. Normally Byleth would have spoken up to correct Shay when she started exaggerating what the two had done, but she and Ash were having fun, and she'd hate to be rude to the son of their client. As such, Byleth just sat by as Shay regaled the younger boy with tales of their adventures, from their rescue of Leonie to their brief excursions in the Dada and Brigid War. Though, to hear Shay tell it, one would think they fought against Dada's greatest generals instead of some bands of scouts and possible deserters. Still, it was entertaining, kind of. Ash seemed very interested, but Byleth was more enjoying just how excited Shay was to talk than the actual content of her stories. Which is probably why she was more aware of the large, broad-shouldered man that peeked into the room than her younger sister was. Shay didn't even stop talking, too caught up in her tale of their adventure through the mountains, to notice, and Ash was completely enraptured, so it fell to Byleth to raise a hand in greeting to the new person. He had short, dark hair and looked a lot like Lord Lonato, if younger, and clean-shaven. He had the same kind smile as the Lord too as he raised a hand in return, before moving slowly and carefully to a nearby seat, not making too much noise to avoid interrupting Shay. And Byleth even brought down an entire mountaintop. Wow, really? Yup. That's why she's the Ashen Dragon, the most powerful mage to ever live. Byleth blinked, a strange feeling of surprise hitting her at Shay's new title for her. It was nicer, sort of, than being called a demon. My, how very impressive, the new man said, applauding Shay's tale and making her stiffen for a moment in surprise. Kristoff. Oh, so that was his name. And Ash clearly recognized him based on his happy reaction to seeing the large man. Hello Ash. I see you've made some new friends. Oh, right, Kristoff, this is Shay, he gestured to Shay, who waved back with a bright grin once she decided this new guy seemed nice. And Byleth. They're Sir Geralt's daughters. Sir Geralt? Sir Geralt, I think I know who you mean, though if I'm correct, it would be Captain Geralt, not Sir, Kristoff corrected, he's a mercenary, not a knight. Oh right. Sorry about that. It's all fine. So, you two were keeping my little brother company. Yeah, our dad is talking with your dad about contract stuff. Shay said with a bright smile. So I'm guessing we'll be seeing more of your group around here. Oh for sure. We're gonna be helping clear out demonic beasts. And probably other stuff, depending on what type of problems you have around here. I see, well if your tales are any indication, we can probably leave it all to you two, Kristoff said with a smile. We probably could. Kristoff, weren't you supposed to arrive earlier? Ash suddenly asked. Nathan and Alice wanted to say hi to you before they went to sleep. For a brief moment, Kristoff's smile faltered. Just some issues the Western Church needed help with. I'll make sure to make it up to the two of them when they wake up. I'm sure they'll be happy about that. Though before the conversation could continue, Geralt and Lonato returned. Kristoff? When did you arrive? Just now, Father, the knight said as he stood, a smile returning to his face. Forgive me for not going to see you immediately, but I saw Ash had made some new friends and I wanted to hear the tales of their daring adventures. Lonato chuckled with a warm smile on his face. Ah, you have no need to apologize, my boy. Though I do think it may be time for certain young people to get to bed. It is quite late already after all. Ash ducked his head, a little embarrassed. Oh, of course, Lord Lonato. The Lord sighed, fondly amused. I've told you before, Ash, you can call me Father. Ash turned a little pink at the suggestion while Geralt headed over to his own kids. All right, Kmin, up you get. Lord Lonato was generous enough to give us an actual house to stay in for the night, and your old man needs his rest. Ha! If you're an old man, Geralt, I wonder what that makes me. Lonato joked, before smiling again, and the house is yours for as long as you wish to stay in Gaspard. I would hate to leave anyone out in the cold once winter starts in earnest. Well, I don't know if we'll be around here that long, but thank you for your hospitality. It is no trouble at all. Have a good night, all of you. Thanks again, Lord Lonato. Shay said, waving to the old man as her dad led her away, a gesture copied by Byleth, much to Geralt's surprise. Well, if the kid has a good feeling about him, maybe we could stay a while, he considered while taking his kids over to the house Lonato indicated to him earlier. One of the Lord's knights led the way, and Geralt couldn't help relaxing a little as he walked. After their problems in the Empire, he could do with relaxing for a bit. Chapter 18, Things Go Wrong Again. Their time at Gaspard territory had certainly been peaceful. Aside from the occasional demonic beast, there hadn't been much fighting for the mercenary band. Not to say that they didn't work, even when they weren't fighting beasts, they went around town helping out. Be it simply helping out with carrying something, or going out to hunt, the mercenary band had easily situated themselves into the town. Byleth and Shay in particular were often seen with the children of Lord Lonato. Ash and his younger siblings were often enraptured by Shay's grand tales, while Kristoff would take the time to train the young duo when he was there. Apparently the young knight was quite impressed with the two, to the point that he suggested they enroll in the Officers' Academy, an idea that was quickly shot down by Geralt. When asked why, he made two simple points. 1. The Officers' Academy is expensive to join, and despite the mercenary band's success, it would certainly eat into their coffers to try sending both Byleth and Shay there, and 2. He wasn't comfortable leaving his daughters alone while he and his band continued to travel, and he highly doubted the academy would be okay with an entire mercenary group staying in their town for a whole year. Shay readily accepted the first reason, while Byleth was satisfied with the second. It is a shame though, I'm sure they would do excellently there, Kristoff noted as he watched the girls train in Lonato's yard. Sure, they'd probably do great anywhere, Geralt admitted. Call me overprotective, but I just don't like the idea. Say no more, I completely understand. We have to do what we can for our families. There was an oddly wistful expression on the younger man's face, one that looked a little out of place. And, if I am being honest, while I enjoyed my time at the academy, I can't say I entirely agree with everything the leadership espouses. Careful there, Kristoff. I'm not big on faith, but saying something like that could go very wrong for you depending on who you voice it around. Kristoff just grinned though. Not to worry, Geralt. I had a feeling about you, that's why I voiced it. I'm a more cautious man than I seem, I assure you. Sure you are, Pell. Sure you are. Their talk turned to more pleasant topics after that, much to Geralt's relief. He didn't like the church, and he could understand it if Kristoff didn't like it either. It's just, there was something in the way the younger man voiced his opinion that raised his hackles. Still, he put it out of his mind soon enough in favor of focusing on working through the winter. His band had hunkered down in Gaspard well enough, so there weren't any concerns about anyone freezing, though they did have the occasional venture out into the surrounding territories for other jobs. It was on one of those trips that they got the news about King Lambert. The king of Faerghus was dead, and Gerald couldn't help but wonder if it was just his luck that crap like this kept happening in every country he visited. A call to arms sounded out, to massacre the people of Duscur for their apparent transgression. It wasn't long before news of Duscur being annexed to the kingdom arrived in the territory, but for the people of Gaspard, the tragedy had yet to end. "Wow, I don't think I've seen anyone fish up that much, even in the summer," Ash said, looking astounded at Byleth as she carried a pail full of fish in one hand while leaning her fishing rod on her shoulder. "Yeah, Bai has always been weirdly great at fishing," Shay said, not even trying to be competitive there since she didn't even like fishing herself. "Fish are good," was Byleth's response as they continued walking. "Yeah, but it's not like we're low on supplies or anything, so you don't need to get so much." Coming to a sudden stop, Byleth's eyes snapped forward. "Shay, wait here with Ash." "Huh? Bai, what's up?" Letting go of the pail and rod, Byleth ran forward, leaving the two behind her as they let out a surprised yell. Arriving at the town, Byleth's eyes narrowed as she saw several armored knights around Gaspard, with many townsfolk shrinking back and whispering to one another at the sight of them. What caught her attention, however, was the amount of knights at the manor. "Hey, you there, don't move," called out one of the knights who spotted her. Based on his movements, it was clear he was going to detain her. Not hesitating for a moment, she charged past him, slipping under his arm as she ran towards the manor. Hey, stop her." Thankfully, despite not being as fast as Shay, her smaller stature meant Byleth was able to move around the knights before they could stop her as she arrived at the manor. "You, stop what you're doing," came Lonato's voice from upstairs. "There's nothing here." Rushing upstairs, Byleth pulled out her sword and came to the sight of Lonato standing in front of Ash's siblings as they cowered behind him, while a knight stood in front of him, making sure he didn't move. "Release Lord Lonato," Byleth calmly ordered, keeping an eye on the knight in white armor as he turned towards her. The knight scoffed, the sound reverberating in his helm. He had a broadsword at his side, but he hadn't drawn it, which was the only reason Byleth hadn't run him through already. "What's this supposed to be? Do you allow children into your guard, Lonato? I won't warn you again." "Byleth, no," Lonato suddenly said, holding a hand up while keeping the other in front of his younger children. "This man is a knight of Siros, you cannot fight him." Byleth frowned. "Like the saint. What are they teaching commoners these days that you don't even recognize a sworn sword of the goddess?" the knight complained, his hand resting on his sword. His armor wasn't the heaviest, but Plat Email was still thick enough that she'd have to aim for his joints if she wanted to do any real damage. "I'll give you one chance, girl. Lay down your sword, and perhaps I shall not strike you down for raising it in the first place. I have already given you my warning." It wasn't a fight she wanted, but if the knight insisted then she would not hesitate. "Tch. Fine then. Take her," he said, nodding to Byleth whirled, catching another knight's blade before it could slice down on her, prompting a shout from Lonato and screams from his children. "You swore no one would be harmed." "I meant you should restrain her, Sergei," complained the first knight, audibly irritated, before pausing as Byleth slammed a palm into the second knight's chest and blasted him with a fireball at point-blank range, sending him crashing into the wall behind him. "Huh. You're not just some brat then." Byleth kicked the fallen knight solidly in the head, slamming him further into the wall, before turning to lock eyes with the knight holding Lord Lonato hostage. "One more chance." "I thought your previous warning was my last. You told him to restrain me, and you swore to Lord Lonato you wouldn't hurt anyone. I don't think you want to." "I do not. It is my duty to investigate Lord Lonato's estate following the accusations of treason against his late son, Christoph Gaspard." "Late?" The knight nodded. "He is deceased. Executed for his part in the tragedy of Duscur." Byleth stared at him, then looked at Lord Lonato, who had gone completely white. "What?" The knight didn't regard him, keeping his eyes fully on Byleth. "Lower your sword, girl. You have already harmed one knight of Siros. Do not make things worse for yourself." Byleth raised her free hand towards the fallen knight and a light glow settled over him. Heal. There. Now no harm has been done. Ha 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 ha, all right. I am willing to accept that. He placed his hand on the hilt of his sword, before drawing it with the faint sound of steel sliding free. Or maybe not steel. Maybe silver, from the gleam of the blade. What is your name, girl? Byleth Eisner. I am a mercenary employed by Lord Lonato. Eisner? No, never mind. I am Gale, a knight in service of the goddess. My name is one she has given to me. Out of respect for your loyalty to your employer, I ask we adjourn to the field outside. I would prefer not to cause undue harm. Okay. How many more knights are in the manor? More than you can hope to face, girl. We'll see, Byleth stated, straightening from her stance and looking towards Lonato, who seemed lost, in a way she hadn't seen before. His mouth was moving without forming words, his gaze completely unseeing. The knight regarded him for a moment, then sighed. Outside it is then. Right, the barest flash caught the corner of her eye, letting Byleth turn, moving her sword before it was wrenched from her grip, torn free by the hooks of a strange sword right before a shield emblazoned with a griffin smashed into her hard enough to send her all the way down the hall. Unfamiliar pain blossomed across her face and chest, making it hard to focus, though her vision cleared in time to see the same sword from before, pale and strangely cracked with 6 hooks jutting from the sides of its blade, pointing straight at her throat. A kid, murmured the woman standing over her. Another knight in white armor, this one not wearing a helmet, showing a tanned face and long, blonde hair. Damn it all, Catherine, grumbled Gale as he moved out from Lonato's lounge, you didn't need to do that. Sir, she had a sword. I had it handled. And now you've dishonored me. Humph. The woman, Catherine, regarded Byleth with cold, blue eyes. So what do we do with her? She raised. Nothing. Wah, sir. You can't be serious. She raised a weapon against a knight of Syros. And did, whatever happened there to Sergei? You can't tell me she had nothing to do with him. Yes, I can. There was no harm done. Gale glanced at the fallen knight and gave him a short kick to the leg. Get up, you lazy bastard. Wait, what? I said get up. Gale turned back to Catherine, his expression hidden but clearly disapproving, as further evidenced by him raising a hand and returning Byleth's earlier favor, mending the pain she felt as she blinked in some surprise. As I said, sheath your sword. We're done here. But... Cassandra? Why are you here? Catherine went rigid, her eyes immediately darting towards Lord Lonato as he stepped out from the lounge. Lord Lonato, I need to speak with you. You did it. Lonato's expression couldn't quite be called surprised. There was recognition in it, realization, a dawning horror, and building anger all at once. You killed my son. Catherine swallowed. I wanted to tea. You killed my son. You murdered my son. You killed my boy. Byleth tried to push herself up. Something about the distress in the Lord's voice, the pain and hate in his eyes, made her want to move, to do something, and in a second, the sword was in her face again, Catherine's eyes returning towards hers in a flash of something impossible to discern. For a moment, it looked like she was going to run Byleth through when Gale's hand caught her wrist. I told you, you shouldn't have been here. But, why you don't understand, sir, I was going to. Murderers, every last one of you. Lonato snapped, his face red with rage and his eyes narrowed with hate. Get out. Get out of my home. Get out or I will kill all of you. You heard him. We are no longer welcome here, Gale stated, before turning to regard Byleth one more time. Come on, both of you. We won't find anything here. Byleth managed to sit up by the time the knights had left. Lonato had collapsed, his face in his hands as heavy sobs racked his once powerful body. None of that anger was there, only pure grief and despair as the kind noble Byleth knew wailed in open sorrow. There was no noble lord here, only an old man crushed by the reality of outliving his own son. And as she watched, a strange feeling took hold in Byleth's chest. Something, she didn't know how to describe. A raw feeling her muted emotions were unused to. There was nothing she could do here, no word of comfort she could offer with her limited experience, and no enemy she could fight. Because the enemy had already left. For the first time, Byleth understood her sister's desire to surpass her. Though, she didn't think it was the same thing. Because Shay just wanted to beat her, not really hurt her. Byleth wanted to kill Catherine. It'd been a long time since Geralt felt as terrified as he did now. Gaspard was in chaos when he returned with his band. The word on everyone's lips was execution as news spread of how Lord Lonato's son had died, though that didn't terrify him. No, what scared him down to his very core were the words, Knights of Syros, and, more than that, the knowledge that one of them hurt his kid. That Byleth had fought against them, and the only thing that kept her from being as dead as Kristoff was their leader having some sense of restraint. Even then, he wanted to do just like Shay was doing and simply take Byleth in his arms and hold her close so nothing could hurt her again. But he couldn't, because he had responsibilities, and so he left his youngest daughter clinging to his eldest like a limpet to a rock and tried to figure out just what the hell happened. The story made no sense. The idea that Kristoff was involved in the king's death just felt too impossible. Why would he? What could the young heir of a tiny lordship possibly gain from royal assassination? He could think of a few things, but none of them fit properly. Lonato's liege lord, Ro, had a reputation, but then why wasn't he investigated too? An entire nation was getting butchered in blame for the king's death, but then some random lordling was also swept up in it? How? Why? And why would the church be involved then? Too many questions raced through Geralt's head as he spent his days trying to keep things steady. A part of him wanted to leave the area completely, in case the knights came back, but paranoia of running into them on the road combined with the head of Lonato's guard offering him a hefty pay to help keep the peace kept him in Gaspard. Even then, when he saw Byleth with an uncharacteristic scowl on her face as she hacked at a training dummy, he really did consider just bolting with her and Shay. I failed, was her answer when he asked her what was wrong. I was supposed to protect Lord Lonato, but that night beat me. She would have killed me. Kid, sometimes, we run into people we can't beat. I know that. You've told me. There's no shame in retreating. She blindsided me. I know we can cheat. I know we should cheat. I was listening to her leader and she attacked me. She attacked me during negotiations, and you can never do that because it breaks trust and means everyone will always look at you as an oath breaker, and she did exactly that and I couldn't stop her. Are you angry? It seemed impossible, but for the first time, he saw a genuine glare on his daughter's face. He was crying. Lord Lonato was crying and she killed his son, and she came here just to tell him that. She came here to hurt him and I didn't stop her from hurting him. Who are the Knights of Syros? Kid, why are you asking that? I want to know. Who are the Knights of Syros? I think you need to calm down. Tell me. Her voice was sharp as she turned towards him. Her grip on her hilt was tight enough to make the blade shake. Who are the Knights of Syros? What are they? Why did they do this? What gives them the right? The right? That, kid. Just tell me. He stared at his quiet, unemotive daughter as she snapped at him, her eyes set in a furious glare and her mouth set in an enraged scowl. There was no mistaking her expression for anything but angry, and he never expected to see it. Carefully, he reached for her hand and uncurled her fingers from her sword's hilt. Her fist was clenched tight and his hands weren't especially dexterous, but he gradually worked the sword from her grip before he pulled his daughter into a hug. She didn't pull back, but she didn't lean in either. She was rigid until she started to shake. It was hard to think she was 16 already. She was growing more and more, day by day, and he should have expected things would change. He knew she was getting more expressive, but he never thought she would feel things this strongly. That she could genuinely get upset at something like this. But then, injustice had a funny way of bringing out emotion. It was a while before Lord Lonato called on Geralt again. The already old noble looked worn as he stared out the window in his office, his hands clasped behind his back. Some people would call his appearance dignified, but to Geralt, he looked like a castle held up by a single support. One that was already cracked straight through the middle. I am sorry. Of all the ways Geralt expected this conversation to start, that wasn't one of them. For what? Your daughter was hurt protecting me. I told her not to fight, and they tried to kill her anyway. I am sorry. Thanks. It's rough, but I have a feeling you're going through worse. Lonato sighed, slowly, still not looking at Geralt. My son is dead. The Central Church executed him on charges of treason, blaming him for the tragedy of Duscur. My son is dead and the truth has been hidden for what I can only assume is convenience. You do not believe my son committed the charges they accused him of? I don't, no. I am glad. It was my first reaction, yet, it is difficult to doubt people. I think we all expect others to be honest. It is a foolish expectation, but one we all hold, as long as there is some trust in our hearts. Though, perhaps expect is not the correct word. Maybe it is hope. Is there a reason you wanted to speak with me? You are a mercenary, Geralt. You are not a knight. You are not beholden to any man except yourself. You will do your job admirably well, but it is merely a job at the end of the day. I was wondering if I may hire you for a job. Geralt had a bad feeling. I can't promise anything, but I can hear you out. Thank you. I expected no less. Finally, Lonato turned, looking at Geralt. And it was impossible to mistake the look of restrained rage in his eyes. For some people, anger surged up like a fire, eating up everything and burning out once its fuel was gone. For others though, anger was like a pot of water set atop of an open flame. It simmered, it boiled, but it stayed in the pot unless something finally tipped it out. Lonato was that second type of person. I want you to kill a woman named Catherine. She was once known as Cassandra Rubens Karen. She is now a knight of Cyros. Is this something you can do? I can't. I see. She is the woman who almost killed your daughter. Geralt felt himself tense on reflex, but he let out a sigh, calming down. I had a feeling. I still can't. I need to take care of my kids. I can't do that if I go up against the Knights of Cyros. I can pay you whatever you want. I'm not as wealthy as other lords, I know that, but I can give you as much as I can. Please. Lonato, I can't. Please, understand. You still have 3 kids to take care of. Would you put them in danger? There was a moment where the anger in Lonato's eyes seemed to flicker. A cool wind keeping the pot from boiling over. Very well. I expect you will want to leave soon. I am sorry to have kept you here for so long. Thank you very much for your service. He bowed his head, and Geralt felt a flash of guilt that he tried to smother. He wasn't successful. I could have my people look into things. Maybe we could find out the truth behind Kristoff's death. If that would help. Lonato just shook his head. No. No, you are right. I would not wish what I am feeling now on anyone I consider a friend. You have children to take care of, and so do I. Thank you for all your efforts. I hope your coming days are brighter than. I hope you take care. Thanks. You take care too, all right. And Geralt left with a pit in his stomach. He wasn't a hero, he could admit that much, but it felt wrong to leave things as they were. Then again, he was a mercenary. And no merc would stick around somewhere there was too much risk and no real reward. Chapter 19, Unfamiliar Anger. It was weird seeing Byleth actually be angry. Shay had gotten used to her adoptive older sister being very, well, she wasn't really apathetic, exactly. That wasn't the right word for it. It wasn't that Byleth was an uncaring person, it's just that she cared less than other people. Which still sounded bad, but it wasn't. It was just how she was. Things that might make someone else mad didn't bother her, and something that would make someone really angry would, at most, slightly annoy her. And it wasn't like she didn't react to things either, she would definitely react if someone, such as Shay, did stuff like poke her while she was trying to sleep and tried to steal food from her plate. It's just that she didn't react strongly. So it was really weird seeing her so agitated ever since they left Gaspard. I wouldn't get worked up about it, said Candace when Shay brought up the subject while on kitchen duty. She's at that age where she's bound to get moody. I remember being a real bitch when I was 16. That's not it, moron, Victor chided, frowning at the dirty blonde lancer from where he was dicing the meat for the night's stew. Weren't you paying attention at all while we were back in Gaspard territory? She was friends with that lord's son and then he went and got executed. Oh, was that it? Huh. Hey, you think she had a crush on him? What? Are you seriously asking that? Hey, it would make sense. She's also at the age to start noticing boys, so I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think Byleth likes boys, Shay pointed out, glancing at the slightly taller woman who was stirring the pot while Shay peeled the vegetables. She doesn't? Huh, yeah, I could see that, that makes sense. Can you hold a consistent opinion for 1 minute? Victor griped, and Shay came to the conclusion she really shouldn't ask the other mercenaries for advice. Perhaps you would care to listen to my advice then? Arvel asked as Shay continued to peel. Letting out a sigh, Shay nodded, not wanting the others to hear her talk with Arvel. Good, now, while I feel odd advising you about your rival in this manner, but if, as you say, your sister does not react strongly to things, then should it not be obvious how badly this is affecting her from how she is reacting to it? Arvel asked as they floated by her. As such, you have one of two options. You may either ignore this all entirely and let her deal with her emotions, or you can go talk with her. About what? You are her sister, are you not? I'm sure you can think of something to talk with her about, Arvel said as they disappeared, which wasn't helpful in the slightest. Clenching her teeth, Shay continued to peel the vegetables as quickly as she could so she could talk with Byleth. Minutes later, Shay was out of the kitchen tent, searching for Byleth, who was easy to find as she spotted her on the training grounds, her sword smacking a training dummy hard enough to break it. Frustrated, Byleth kicked the broken dummy to the side as she began to set up another one. Hey, Shay spoke up, making her sister glance over at her. I see training is going well. Byleth responded, making sure the second dummy was stable. So, I wanted to talk, if you have the time. Make it quick. I don't really know what to say, but I'm really worried. You haven't been acting like yourself, and I don't like how bad you're feeling. Is that all? Hey, come on by, I'm trying to talk with you. Shay said, feeling indignant at getting brushed aside like that. You can't just ignore me cause you're feeling bad. I'm in the middle of training, you should go back to help with kitchen duty. Seriously? Shay stared in disbelief as Byleth turned away from her so she could strike at the training dummy. Don't ignore me. The loud thwack of a sword hitting the training dummy was the only response she got. Gritting her teeth, Shay felt a swell of anger in her as her sister paid her no attention. As such, she did the only thing she could think of. Bringing her fist up, Shay punched Byleth across the cheek, knocking her to the ground. Byleth blinked, genuine surprise crossing her face as she looked up at her sister. Shay dash. I win. Shay shouted before Byleth could finish speaking. So that means I'm the older sister now. That means you have to listen to me. That wasn't a fight dash. And as the older sister, I'm telling you, you aren't allowed to leave me behind anymore. Shay shouted, feeling tears well up. You can't go off on your own if you think something dangerous is happening. We're stronger together. Byleth stared at her, her usually dull eyes wide with disbelief and confusion, before she pushed herself up. Shay clenched and unclenched her fists, hating the tears that threatened to spill from her eyes, but she kept her gaze steady on her sister as Byleth continued to stare at her, her cheek red where Shay punched her. You can't run off like that, Shay insisted, I wasn't even there. I had to hear from Gertrude that you almost died. You can't do that to me. You're my sister, you're not allowed to die. Say something. Please, talk to me. You almost died before, Byleth muttered with an unexpected heat in her voice. She couldn't seem to let go of her sword, her grip shifting as a strange tension filled her body. You were stabbed. I wasn't. That's different though. I have powers you don't. It is different. You killed the soldier that hurt you. I couldn't do anything. Her grip tightened on her sword. I don't understand why I feel like this. I never have before. I don't understand it, everything feels tight and tense and there's this pressure I can't do anything about. You're angry, Shay realized. It wasn't quite a revelation, or at least it shouldn't be, but a part of her still thought her sister just couldn't get mad the way other people did. That's natural. Remember the expression things I made years ago? Everybody gets angry. I don't. Well, obviously you do. What else would you call this? I don't know, I haven't felt it before. I didn't feel it when that noble harassed us, I didn't feel it when you almost died, I've never felt it, so why am I feeling it now? I barely know Lonato, he was just a client, so why am I angry? You're not. Well, yeah, but I'm different from you. I don't know why I'm not more mad, I just don't get that angry when people die. She shrugged. I guess I'm too used to it. So why do you care that I almost died? Shay went rigid, feeling like her sister just punched her in turn. A flicker of concern crossed Byleth's face. Shay. How can you ask that? Why you should know. Of course I'm more upset, it's just different. You're my family. Of course I care. You cared when you thought I died, right? She hated how weak her voice got there, naturally shrinking back at what she was almost positive the answer would be. Yes. Yes, I did, I cared, I was. Byleth's breath shook, and Shay was shocked to see tears starting to prick at her eyes. I don't understand. I don't know what I'm feeling. I don't know why it hurts. Shay hugged her sister. It felt like the only thing she could do. Byleth was being hugged again. Something deep in her chest hurt like it never had before. She dropped her sword and wrapped her arms around her sister, startled by the sudden sob she let out. Though, she wasn't completely sure which of them started crying. Just that she couldn't bear to let go. Some time later, Geralt was face to face with his two daughters, both of whom were red in the eyes and their hands in an iron grip of one another. He had heard what had happened, the two girls didn't really make an attempt to be secretive earlier, so word got back to him quickly. Even so, he still took the time to prepare himself as he got ready for what was to come. What are the Knights of Syros? Shay asked. Geralt sighed. It was a long, deep sigh, carrying far too much weight with it. He looked at his kids, both unwavering as they stared at him, before he nodded, accepting this wasn't a conversation he could put off any longer. The Knights of Syros are the military arm of the Central Church. They're a knightly order dedicated to upholding the will of the goddess as the Church defines it. If the Church needs something handled with violence, the Knights are who they call on for it. And I used to be one of them. He didn't like the look Byleth gave him there. It was strangely startled and affronted. Not quite betrayed, but he still didn't like it. Specifically, I used to be their captain. The leader of the Knights as a whole. Byleth's grip tightened around Shay's hand. Shay looked at her, then back at her dad. Maybe we should sit down. Yeah, that might be a good idea. He didn't have too much room in his tent, but he could at least pull over a chair while his kids sat on his bed. It gave him a moment to collect his thoughts. I was born in Faerghus a long time ago. I was a mercenary. Not really anyone special, but I did get lucky in a sense. I was hired to help guard the Archbishop Rhea, the leader of the church, on a trip through the kingdom, and I nearly died protecting her. She healed me, and I joined the Knights of Syros. I was pretty good at it, I'm not going to lie. I became captain for a reason and things were fine. I followed my orders and protected the Archbishop. And then, I met your mother. He looked towards Byleth, who just stared back at him, then glanced at Shay, who looked a little uncomfortable at hearing something so personal, but kept close to her sister anyway. I won't go into all the details, but I fell in love with her, he continued. I loved her more than anyone I ever met before. I loved her more than the sky loves the stars. I loved her enough to have a kid with her. And I was so happy to think I would have a family with her. And then she died. Rhea was the one that helped deliver you, Byleth, and she said Satrai died in childbirth, but something about it, she wouldn't let me see Satrai's body. And the way she held you, it felt like she wanted to take you away. The way she acted, the way everything looked, it broke whatever trust one had in her. So I left. I set a fire at the monastery and I abandoned everything I knew there because I couldn't trust it any longer. I needed to keep you safe, and the monastery stopped feeling safe. He sighed. I still don't know if that was the right choice. It was. Geralt paused, then looked at Byleth. He didn't expect her to interrupt him, but the look in her eyes was steely and certain. If you didn't leave, we wouldn't have met Shay. So you made the right choice. Why yeah. And you wouldn't have met everyone else either. Shay exclaimed as well. It's been rough, but I'm really glad I joined you guys. If those knights are gonna be a problem, then that just means I have to get stronger so they can't hurt you too. I'll make sure they can't hurt you too as well, Byleth said with quiet determination. Letting out a sigh, he leaned back in his chair. I will say, I never would have thought taking you in would have led to something like this, Shay, but I'm glad I did. I am too. Shay declared, earning an agreeing nod from Byleth. And now that we know this stuff, we can make sure to avoid the knights and the monastery. Is this why you didn't want us to join the academy? Byleth asked, looking thoughtful. Geralt nodded. Yeah, the academy is at the monastery, so no way I was taking a chance with the two of you going there. Heh, well, not like we were ever going there anyways, Shay dismissed, and I doubt you'd ever take a job there. Trust me kid, I don't plan on it. Now come on, we should get something to eat before only the vegetables are left in the stew, Geralt said, getting up to get his daughters to do the same. Well, as the older sister, I clearly deserve first dibs. Right, you two really need to explain that thing of yours to me. Geralt muttered as the trio went out, a family affirmed once again. Chapter 20, The Years Between. Captain, it's time. Geralt paused, then glanced up from his ledgers at his mercenary band's longest-lasting healer. Gertrude looked oddly serious, which was concerning. Right, that time. Yes. All right, what time could she mean? Time to move on. They'd only just gotten back into the Alliance after another trip into the Empire, so it probably wasn't that. They didn't have any jobs lined up either, which was why he was sitting in an inn instead of out in a tent. It was summer, so it wasn't Byleth or Shay's birthday, it wasn't his anniversary either, and he was pretty sure Gertrude didn't even know when that was, nor would she care. She and Ezra had a thing going, but she didn't look pregnant. Yeah, I have no idea what you mean. I figured, but I wanted to see if you would guess right. He sighed at her blunt response, prompting a slight grin from her. It's time your daughters got new clothes again. Again? Wait, really? What's wrong with their old clothes? Aside from the fact that Byleth tore through the shirt she was putting on this morning. He blinked. That happened. It did. I'm surprised you didn't hear Shay mocking her for it. Well, that did explain the laughter he heard earlier. Are you sure we need to buy new ones though? We should have more clothes in storage. Captain, you can't just keep giving your daughters hand-me-downs. Byleth is 18 and Shay is, whatever age she is. They're growing girls with their own body types and you can't just toss tunics at them and hope they'll fit. Are you sure? We should have something. Geralt, your daughter ripped through a shirt because her boobs are too big. I'm buying her clothes today. Now fork over some coin for it or I'll use the medical funds. Geralt sighed. Fine, all right. Buy whatever they need. I was checking the ledgers today anyway, so I'll just make a note of whatever you spend. Good. With that, she walked off, and Geralt returned to his accounting. Hopefully they wouldn't rack up too big an expense. Do we really need new clothes? Byleth asked as she followed Gertrude and Candace through town. Shay was along with her, of course, wearing an admittedly ill-fitting orange tunic. My coat is still fine. You can't walk around in just a coat, Byleth, Gertrude chided, there's a word for that and you don't want it associated with you. Sides, is it really such a bad thing? Candace asked, glancing back at the two girls, it's a girls' day out. Youngsters like you oughta be happy to have fun like this. What's fun about clothes shopping? Shay asked. Lots of stuff. You try things on, see how they look, pick it if it's comfy and not too pricey, that sort of thing. I don't really get how that's fun. You'll know it when you try it. First things though, we gotta find a clothes place. Hey, Gert, which one's the fancy type? It depends. Some tailors are fancy. Nah, tailors are the type that mend clothes. I think. It's, no, I know this one. A boutique. Yeah. One of those. They usually got good clothes for ladies. Granted, none of us are ladies in the noble sense, but we're still women, so it should work. I think. Byleth and Shay shared a look while Gertrude tapped her chin in thought. Well, if you spot a boutique, we could give it a try. We're in Leicester right now, so they're slightly less likely to throw us out for not being well dressed enough. Wait, how's that work? Shay asked. I thought the point of a clothes shop was to buy clothes. Why would you have to dress up for it? Ask the nobility, Shay. The bourgeois make the rules, we just have to follow them. That's stupid. It's society. But let's leave the heavy topics for later. For now, that looks like a nice place. And so the Eisner sisters were introduced to the enjoyable and or frustrating activity that was shopping for clothes. Now, it wasn't as though the concept completely eluded the two sisters, it's just that their circumstances hadn't really required buying clothes for specifically personal use before this point. More often, the two would, as part of their chores, put in an order for a bulk amount of clothes and armor when needed, and then just take whatever worked best for them. Byleth tended to prefer black and gray clothes while Shay liked brown and orange, with the occasional splash of red in the mix, so they really didn't have to worry much when it came to clothes they would like. Which also meant they hadn't really experimented with styles before this point, and, well, while it didn't take long for Shay to pick out some simple dresses and tunics that she liked, ones that would be easy enough to armor up later and could be worn easily enough with what shorts and pants she also picked out, Byleth decided to experiment a bit. Bye? Did you rip through another shirt? Shay asked. No, I didn't. This one is just like this. Shay raised an eyebrow. It's supposed to show off your chest and belly like that. Yes. I like it. The pink lining is nice. Huh. Well, I guess if you like it, Shay said with a shrug, before idly considering if she should add something to spice up her own outfit. She liked what she picked out, but maybe it could be more colorful? While Shay went off to explore her options, Byleth returned to her own exploration, starting with some leggings that looked interesting. And some heeled boots that looked interesting. And a detached shirt collar that looked interesting. And those shorts looked cute. Oh, and so did that pendant with the tassel. Maybe she should add more tassels to her clothes? By the time Gertrude and Constance found Byleth again, they found her in a rather interesting outfit. Byleth, what are you wearing? My new outfit, what do you think? Byleth asked, seeming excited about what she chose. It looks great. Candace said, grinning, giving the younger Merc a thumbs up. Thank you. Byleth seemed quite happy that her fashion sense was appreciated, while Gertrude muttered to herself that at least it fit her. Thankfully they didn't have to wait long for Shay to come back, who was definitely more modestly dressed, even if the colors were a bit garish. Hey, look what I found. Shay said, gesturing to an over-the-shoulder cape, before moving it around her head. Works as a cape and a scarf. Handy, Byleth noted, while Gertrude wondered where these two got their sense of fashion. Well, is that all? The medic asked, already doing some mental math about how much this would all cost. Yeah, I think I'm good, Shay responded as Byleth nodded. Great, then let's go pay. Constance said, immediately getting the attention of a red-headed worker. I can help you right here with that. Anna said, all grins as she was ready to get paid. Now altogether that should be 2,000 gold. Eh? What are you talking about? This can't be worth more than 1,200, Candace immediately responded with a frown. They weren't even proper outfits, it's different pieces they grabbed. Anna's smile got very strained there. Be that as it may, these are all made out of the highest quality material around, and I can guarantee you they're worth the price. Worth market price, sure, but how much did you mark it up? Candace asked, before glancing around the store. I'm seeing plenty of things around here that seem to be twice the price than the usual. I sincerely hope you aren't trying to accuse me of scamming my customers. Of course not, just saying you want to make a profit, and I'm sure you made more than enough to let some things slide, Constance said, before smirking. Though if you aren't making that much, well, I can understand being in need of money. Why, I'm sure I can spread the word around of you raising your prices cause you need the money. Yeah, the smile looked almost murderous now. Ah, my apologies, it seems those items were meant to go on sale. It seems you are right, they were meant to just be 1200. Heh, glad we can do business then. Candace said, smiling again. Thanks, Candace, you really know how to help a gal save some money, Gertrude praised as she paid. Kinda feel like Constance would be scary as a merchant, Shay muttered. Oh, I was. The blonde admitted, much to their surprise. Yeah, it didn't go so well, cause people kept thinking I was trying to strong-arm them into buying stuff. Huh. I'm glad you joined up, Byleth said. Ah, I'm glad I did as well. Heh, well come on now, sweet as this is, we shouldn't keep your dad waiting, Gertrude said, getting the kids to move along as they went back to camp. Mainly because she wanted to see how Geralt would react to these outfits. It was a good decision all around, really, because seeing him nearly choke on his tea was hilarious. Hey Shay, do you mind helping me cut my hair? Byleth asked her sister one day upon noticing how long her hair had gotten, already going down her back. Oh sure. Shay responded with a smile, tossing the book she was reading onto her bedroll. You know, you don't need to cut it all the time. Look at me, my hair is super long and I don't have any problems with it. I just don't like having long hair, Byleth said as she handed her dagger to Shay. Gets in the way. Fine, fine. Shay said, taking the dagger as she got to work on her sister's hair once they sat down. Same as usual. Yeah. Byleth responded, feeling her sister grab her hair and begin to cut it. Just goes to show how much better you are since you don't have to worry about your hair mid-combat. Arvel commented. Arvel, would you cut it out for once? Shay requested, speaking freely with her partner since it was just her and Byleth, who didn't mind if her sister talked to herself. Oh fine, if you insist. I will cut it out just like you just cut out a bigger chunk of hair than you intended. What? Shay glanced at her partner, then looked at the clump of hair in her hand. Then she looked at Byleth's hair and noticed it did look distinctly uneven. Oh, that's an easy fix. What's an easy fix? Byleth asked. Just cut a little more than I meant to. It's fine, you wanted your hair short anyway, right? Here, I'll just even it out, Shay said, moving to grab hair from the other side. Just be careful, okay? Byleth asked as Shay tried to cut the same amount from the other side. Do you care about how short it is? I'd prefer it around my shoulders. Ah. Shay, if it's too much I can handle it dash. No, it's all good. Shay responded, even as she realized she got it wrong. Well, that's fine, she could just cut from the other side, and then she frowned. She noticed she actually cut too much there. So she tried to get it from the opposite side, and, okay, I think it's more even now. Shay, I'm feeling something. And I'm not sure what it is. Oh, that's probably joy. At how great your haircut is. Are you trying to make her look like your father? Arvel queried, floating above the two of them with a pensive look. What? No, she doesn't look like Dad, does she? Shay. Why would I look like Dad? Byleth asked, definitely feeling new emotions now. You don't. You look great. I just need to take some from the back, probably. Reaching up, Byleth tried to feel her hair, only to touch the sides of her head. Maybe if I just dash. Before she could try anything, Shay felt Byleth grab her hand. Let go of the knife, and please leave the tent for now. Feeling very sheepish, Shay did, muttering out a sorry as she left the tent. So it seems professional barbering is not in your future, Arvel said, quite amused. That only happened cause you distracted me. Shay hissed out. What distracted you? Geralt asked, walking up to Shay. Oh, nothing Dad. Well, is Byleth okay? Wanted to check up on you two before we broke camp. Geralt explained, before he heard the tent flap open. Oh, Byleth dash, why are you wearing a helmet? Looking behind her, Shay winced as she saw Byleth wearing a leather helmet, normally reserved for sparring. Felt like it, Byleth said, before walking past the two. Is she in a bad mood or something? Ah well, you know, probably just woke up on the bad side of the bedroll. Shay tried to hurriedly explain. Looking at her sister, Shay couldn't help but wince once again at what she had done. She could probably make it up to her later, right? Right. Maybe you could even it out further by shaving her bald. Shut up, Arvel. Alright girls, gather around, Victor requested, gesturing for the Eisner sisters to take a seat at the same table as him. Your old Uncle Victor is going to be teaching you one of the most important lessons a merc can learn in this line of work, how to gamble. Byleth exchanged a look with Shay, before they both said what they were thinking. How is gambling important to being a mercenary? Your dad's brother. Byleth paused, then sighed at Shay's confused response while Victor laughed. Nope, there's no relation between us. I was trying for a term of endearment thing. Never mind, it doesn't matter. The real important part is making sure you two kids know what you're doing when you inevitably run into someone looking to take advantage of you. Stab them twice in the gut, Byleth answered. That's illegal, Victor promptly responded, then paused, unless they're an outlaw. Then, legally speaking, you can kill them however you want. Just don't torture them because that's a great way to get branded an outlaw instead because the nobles think you're creepy. Did you ever torture anyone? Shay asked, genuinely curious. Nah, I'm not the type. Too squeamish, answered the man the two girls had seen crush a bandit's head with a warhammer just 2 days ago. I did know a guy who did though, and yeah, he was regarded as a real freak. That was a while back, thinking about it. I wonder what Methode is up to these days. Never mind. My point is, there's gonna be folks who will offer gambles and you might be pressured to join in. Or, hell, you might even think it's fun to join in. If you refuse outright, it should be fine, but on the off chance you do decide to gamble, think back to this lesson so you know what to do. That being to cheat, enormously and without reservation. Got it, Byleth said, nodding to show her understanding. Shay, meanwhile, just looked confused. First and foremost is making sure you know how to catch a cheat, Victor said, pulling out a deck of cards. There's plenty of ways to cheat, and plenty of ways to slip up. He set the cards between them. Here, cut the deck for me, not with a knife. Just grab the deck and separate it in two. Sheathing her dagger, Byleth grabbed the deck, grabbing about half or so and setting it down next to the first deck. Now then, let's start simple, guess which card I'm about to draw, and the closest guess to what card it is wins. Here, I'll start my guess, it'll be a 3 of clubs. 8 of hearts. I'll go with a king then. Of clubs. Grinning, Victor flipped the card over, showing a 3 of clubs. And if we were betting money, you would have gotten cheated out of it. Second lesson, always make sure to shuffle the deck yourself, and third, he flicked a card out of his sleeve. Make sure it isn't tampered with beforehand. Wait, how's the tampering with the deck? Shay asked, that card wasn't in the deck. Yes it was. Victor chuckled, before going through what his sleight of hand step by step, showing where he'd stacked the card so it stuck out of the deck just enough for him to position it without them noticing, and when he'd slipped the card up his sleeve to make sure the card he wanted was on top. See? Now, that's not the only way to tamper with a deck. You can do it in subtle ways like I did, or you can mark the cards ahead of time, if you're using your own deck. There are ways to subtly mark them too, if you bend the cards in certain ways, but of course most of these tricks work better if you have a pal at the table helping you out. Shay nodded, still looking a little lost while Byleth was quietly absorbing all the new information. So, me and Byleth would do better if we were helping each other. Exactly. Though you might want to let Byleth be the one helping you, Shay. You're looking kinda lost. Hey, I can do it. I just need to practice. Sure, but there's nothing wrong with not getting it. Like I said, It usually works better if there's two of you cheating together. Like Byleth playing as the dealer and making sure you get the best cards at the table. I don't need help though, Shay insisted, frowning, which prompted a chuckle from Victor. Shay, let me make something clear, alright? It's okay if you're not the best at everything. You can try to be, if you want, but you're gonna have spots you aren't as good in. You don't see me trying to ride a horse like Candace or heal people like Gertrude, right? Or stab people like Ezra, Byleth suggested. No, I can do everything better than that string bean. Aside from maybe lock-picking, I'm willing to give him that one, even if I could do the exact same thing with a big enough rock. My point is, there's no such thing as being intelligent. You're always gonna be smart in some ways and dumb in others. You won't have the brains to do everything, so let other people pick up the slack, alright? You already know you're stronger working with your sister than against her, so just keep that in mind when it comes to other stuff too. Humph. I thought you were teaching us how to cheat, not trying to give life lessons, Shay complained. Learning how to cheat is a life lesson, Squirt. And hey, while I have you here, how about I impart another one? In this case, a lesson about cultural differences. With that, Victor shuffled the deck together again before placing it back on the table. Then he placed two more card decks on the table with an amused grin on his bearded face. Alright, what's the difference? That deck's red, that deck's blue, and that deck is, I guess that's a kind of greenish color. Shay offered. It's olive green, Byleth said, it also has a shield on the back. I was getting to that part. Heh, you're right enough, sure. The covers all look different. Flip them over though, and what do you see? Victor asked while flipping the first card of each deck, showing a line of aces. Hey, wait, these two look weird, Shay noted, pointing to the cards from the blue and green decks. The symbols are all different. Right you are, Shay. This one, from the Imperial Standard deck, he tapped the card that came from his original deck, is an ace of spades. But this one here, from the Kingdom Standard deck, he tapped the card from the blue deck, is an ace of swords, while this one, and lastly, he tapped the card from the green deck, is an ace of snow. Care to guess where it comes from? The Alliance, Byleth answered, earning a grin from the burly merc. Exactly. You see, while most gambling houses you can name will use the Imperial Standard deck. It's recognizable, everyone knows what's up with it, there's no worries. But some folks from the kingdom, in all their infinite wisdom, decided an Imperial deck wouldn't do for them, so they decided to change things up. Instead of the standard spades, hearts, clubs, diamonds, the kingdom went for swords, cups, staves, and coins, and instead of Imperial red, they went for Kingdom blue. Victor spread the cards out as he explained, showing that each of them was marked differently, and where the hearts and diamonds were printed in red ink, the cups and coins were printed in blue. Not the brightest idea, given it meant Faerghon printing houses had to commission an entire different set of woodblocks to make their versions of cards, but they did it anyway because Faerghons are nothing if not stubborn dastards. Which leads us right over to the Alliance cards, which do things completely differently. Once more he laid out the cards and Shay blinked at the sudden wash of color. Oh wow, these are pretty. Ain't they? See, these sets of cards went for something very different from the standard set, drawing off of old stories instead of recognizable implements and symbols. So for card suits, you have the snow, the flowers, the moons, and the gales, he explained, gesturing in turn to the azure snowflakes, the crimson flowers, the golden moons, and the emerald spirals printed on each card, though I'll add that these colors ain't always consistent. The gales are always green and the flowers are always red, but sometimes you get decks with the snowflakes printed in silver and the moons colored a deep blue. Why the change up? Who knows? Way I heard it, it has to do with the seasons, though I personally think gold works for a better autumn color than blue. And, what's all this supposed to mean? Shay asked, you're trying to say something about the nations, right? And how everybody does things differently. Oh sure, there's that, but I'm also saying you need to check which deck someone's using before you try to cheat them. Victor barked a laugh as Shay frowned at him. More seriously, consider this an easy way of looking at the countries around here. Adresja sets the standard, Faergus goes out of their way to do the opposite while still copying them, and Leicester goes off and does its own thing that's barely even consistent. Huh. Yeah, okay, that makes sense, Shay said, nodding along. Hey, could you show me some more card tricks? Sure I can. And after that, how about I show you two how to cheat at dice? Heck yeah. Shay cheered, a big grin on her face as Byleth idly studied the cards on the table. She understood what Victor was going for, but the metaphor seemed kind of silly to her. Even if there were differences in the symbols, they were all still playing cards at the end of the day. There wasn't that much difference between them. Riding on horseback in combat felt completely different than fighting on foot. You could have more speed, and each swing you made had more weight to it. However, it also had its difficulties. Ack, come on. Shay shouted as she missed a swing at a dummy, the horse she was on rushing straight past it. Why is this so weird? You do tend to go for rapid strikes with two swords. So going for a heavy swing with one sword is completely different, Byleth noted as Shay came back, jumping off Argo as she grumbled. Feh, don't see why I have to train for horseback. It's handy, Byleth said, holding out an apple for Argo, the horse eating it before nuzzling against her hand. Doesn't matter if it's handy if I can't hit anything. It does matter to practice though. You never know when we might need to fight while riding. She glanced over at their barrels of weapons. Maybe you should try it with a lance. You might feel better with it. I don't know how you're so good with everything you use, Shay complained, pouting. I swear, it's like you have a natural instinct for any weapon someone puts in your hand. That's not true. I'm average with anything that's not a sword. She paused. Or my fists, I guess. Being average with everything is still better than being bad at some things. Shay huffed, then glanced at the lances. Maybe I should just try one of those? But that's learning a whole different thing. Is there a way to fight with two swords on top of a horse? Probably. That sounds like a bad idea though. Yeah, I guess, it would be kind of cool to be a strong knight like Dad though, HM. The thought of her, Byleth, and their dad all dressed up as full knights on horseback crossed Shay's mind, and she had to admit it wasn't a bad image. Byleth could probably be one of those fancy knights with the light magic in the stories, and Shay could be her dark counterpart. All dark and edgy and, wait, did she have the right temperament to be a dark knight? Byleth was the stoic one, so. What are you thinking about? Byleth asked, prompting a shrug from Shay. Just if I could be a scary dark knight. I'm not all stoic and stuff, so I think I have to go the other direction and act crazy instead. Don't act crazy. People won't hire you if they think you're a murderous lunatic. It's part of the style. Shay complained, pouting, before studying her sister with a speculative eye. No, you couldn't be a dark knight. You seem stoic, but you're way too soft on the inside. I'm soft. Yeah, you know, you're sweet. You don't even like killing bugs. Byleth frowned. They're not bothering anyone. See? Way too soft. You need your big, strong older sister to protect you. Since when were you older? Since last time, don't think about it. Shay grinned, before a thought occurred. Actually, here. Byleth blinked as Shay suddenly handed her something. She raised an eyebrow as she looked at the small whistle in her hand. What is this? A merc whistle. You know, like the one Dad gave us when we were on lookout all the way in Sauron. The one you took off with by accident. She paused. Is this that same whistle? Might be. Either way. I figure you should have it. That way, if anything ever happens to you, you can blow it and I'll come running. Byleth lightly punched Shay's shoulder. Hey. Rude. Here I am, offering to protect you, and you hit me. She pouted, though she grinned about a second later. You like it, huh? Yeah. I don't have anything for you though. I don't need anything. As the older sister, I'm the one that protects you, you know. As the actual older sister, I'll make sure to return the favor. As the actual older sister, I can tell you right now that you don't need to. Yes I do. She paused. Actually, I know what you could use. A tactics primer. Hey. I don't need one of those. I'm doing just fine with what I've got. Yeah, I'll make sure to write one up for you. That way you can learn everything you need from your much more experienced older sister. Shay narrowed her eyes. Get a horse. We're going to joust for this. Okay, sure. Don't be upset when you lose. Just for that, I'm not holding back. To very little surprise, Shay lost anyway. Turns out, not holding back didn't matter much when she really didn't have the skills in that area to begin with. This isn't over yet, Shay declared, shaking out her hand after her lance had splintered against Byleth's shield. Best 2 out of 3. I'm ready when you are, Byleth said with an amused smile. Shay didn't fare any better on the second pass. Really, she fared worse, and that led to a very annoyed Ezra confiscating their laces and declaring that neither of them were allowed to joust without supervision again. You weren't even doing it right, he groused, tossing Shay a vulnerary to help with the bruises she got from hitting the ground. You're supposed to aim for the shields, not each other's heads. Don't you still win if you knock the other person out though? Shay asked before downing the healing brew. Sure you do, and then you get me coming around to smack you upside the head for knocking your sister out. Really, you would have won the first round since you broke your lance properly. Wait, really? Oh. That means we're tied. So we can. No. But Ezra. Answer's still no. Especially since these ain't tourney lances, they're for training, and breaking them is a waste. Which is why your new competition is to see who can fix the lance they broke better. You're just upset because I would be an awesome Dark Knight. What the genuine hell does that mean? As Shay launched into an explanation of her beliefs regarding the Dark Knight aesthetic, Byleth simply got to work on repairing the lances that could be fixed. If they turned useless, they could always burn the remains as firewood, otherwise, Byleth was going to give it her best spot. She wanted to win their competition, after all. Check the description for the links to the author.